stuff that I've ever heard, and they've won a lot of things this year. We must have very talented students.
Yeah, the cards are really nice if you've ever seen them.
And they're making your bracelets too, is that what you said? Awesome, that's great. I'm gonna have to stop and buy one. Thank you.
Next.
Next we have,
the
Wylandville is here to do a presentation
Thanks
for
for
us
coming.
today. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. I'm Shannon Balch. I'm the principal at Wylandville Elementary, and I have with me the members of my school-wide positive behavior support core team for our building. So this is Olivia Bosch. She's a first grade teacher. Heather Mary is our learning support teacher. Christy Chavez is a fourth grade teacher, and Brian Anderson is our school psychologist. So as at Wylandville and at all the elementary schools, we're doing school-wide positive behavior support, and each building has a core team, and those people meet and they make decisions on behalf of the building. And it's nice because our team has a wide representation of grade levels and different roles in the school, so that as we're making decisions for the kids and what we're doing through this program, we get a good representation so that you don't have anybody upset with you when you're telling them that they need to do things.
Yeah.
I want to share a couple of percentages and statistics with you so that you understand why this is so important that we're doing these things. And these came from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 9.4% of kids that are aged 2 to 17 have been diagnosed with ADHD. 7.4% of children aged 3 to 17 have behavior problems in school. 7.1% of children aged 3 to 17 have been diagnosed with anxiety. And these percentages, they equal out to millions of kids across the United States. 3.2% of children have been diagnosed with depression. These have all been increasing. These percentages have been increasing over time, and as of late, they're just getting more and more kids are having these issues. And this breaks down in our classrooms within our schools to 1 in 6 kids aged 2 to 8, which that's, elementary age kids, you're looking at 5 to, about 10 in our elementary buildings. They has a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. So when you're thinking about that, if you have a class size of 20 kids, you're looking at 3 or 4 kids that have one of these things that need to be addressed so that they can learn effectively in our schools.
So our school-wide positive behavior support implementation system has completely changed the climate of our school. And our program is based on the book, The Doc by Peter Reynolds. And it's about a little girl named Vashti, and her art teacher encourages her to make her mark. So we took the words, make your mark, and they have our school expectations on them. They're the same throughout the school, in every classroom, and every open space that you're in. So this is listed everywhere within our school. And if you haven't read this book, it's a great read. And when you come into our school, you'll see dots within classrooms because we do a lot with our theme. This was at our kickoff. Teachers had the book and we're having a good time.
And in our school, we talked about a positive approach, and that's really a big thing. I think if you walk through the halls, you can always see that, because as teachers and staff members administer dots to children for making their mark, the children in turn are able to actually get something positive from that. They collect their dots and charts in their classrooms, and those dots have a lot of meaning to them. If they are able to earn 20 in a marking period, then they are able to have what we call dot parties at the end. And for example, this year we turned our multi-purpose room into a movie theater and showed a movie to celebrate. We also played some gaga ball and had a snack for the second marking period. The third marking period, we're talking about putting kids in like stations to do some physical activities, like some, exercise and things that they like to do. And we like to always end the year with a bounce house, which gives them a chance to just celebrate making their mark. As far as teachers and their individual classrooms, we also set goals according to the dots. For every 5 dots that the children get, they're able to fill out a bigger paper dot and put their name into a drawing and then Mrs. Balch draws the names, and the kids are able to get some little prize that they enjoy. So that's a really nice way for us to do that. And I also wanted to talk about, in addition to that, we also use a system of Class Dojo, which is an electronic way to keep track of points, and a reward system that allows us to maintain communication with parents. And we have found that using the Class Dojo along with the dots has really proven very effective for us. Instead of capitalizing on negative behaviors, what we do is if we see a child who's not really making their mark, we will compliment the kids around them in the hopes that that child will, join in. And it's been amazing for us to see how that positiveness spreads, because those children want to earn their dots too. So it's been a really exciting thing for us. In the Class Dojo, we can also set milestones. For example, in my classroom, we reached 2,000 points recently. So one of the students brought a Bluetooth disco ball, and we had disco lunch. In the 3rd grade, they celebrated Pajama Day, where everybody, even including their teachers, dressed in pajamas for the day. So we just kind of try to do things to, promote positiveness in the school.
Okay, so our core team went to a TIPS training, which is team initiated problem solving. And we meet monthly using this form that you see on the screen, and we look at data regarding major and minor behavior write-ups. And from the data, we create a precise problem statement, and we try to target exactly where, when, what, and who is involved in these repeating incidents. And so then we create a goal, which typically includes reteaching or modeling appropriate behavior in specific areas. And then we pitch this to all staff, or sometimes it could be a select group of staff. And the next time we meet, we use data to decide if the solution was effective or if we need to make another change. And we share this monthly data with staff and take ideas and feedback at our faculty meetings, and so then staff also feels included.
And it gives them an opportunity to give feedback and offer suggestions to each other. People talk about what's working in their classroom, what changes need to be made. What's really important is this group of teachers, they give up a lot of extra time in meeting to do some of the planning and gathering the data and creating some of these goals and things. Last year, Wylandville was granted or became part of a group that got a grant through the IU to start doing benchmarking. We do reading benchmarks, math benchmarks. This gave us a chance to do behavior benchmarking 3 times a year, and we were looking at internalizing and externalizing behavior. And those percentages that I shared with you at the beginning are why this is so important. All of these things are on the rise, depression in kids, ADHD in kids, anxiety in our students. So looking at what behaviors kids are internalizing and externalizing, you're able to then address those things and help them be more successful in school. So as part of that grant, we did that, and we also started looking at Tier 2 interventions, which is really important. All of the elementary buildings are doing Tier 1 interventions, but as part of this grant, we received some additional training in doing Tier 2 interventions. So we're going to share a little bit more about that with you so that you can see where we're moving with this.
So is this so you've removed the student ID numbers and
Yes.
this is an actual...
This is, Brian's going to talk a little bit about this and explain it. This is the actual form that the teachers fill out so that then, you explain this because he pulls the data on this, so he'll do a better job of explaining it to you.
Okay.
So this is the screening tool. When we attended our training through the grant, this was the training, one of the universal screening tools that were highly recommended, research-based screening tool, and it's also free. And the idea behind it is that each teacher has a chance to rate their students 3 times a year based on the categories you see above. And those numbers represent 0, 1, and 2, and 3, how often a behavior is occurring. So 0 would be never, 3 would be frequently. Okay. So each teacher is then rating students in their class. The first time we do it is about 6 weeks into the school year after teachers have a little bit of time to get to know their children. And then we do this screener on every child in our building. Following the screening tool then, data is collected, and if you can see the yellow and the red, yellow is indicating at risk, and then red is indicating a higher level of need. So from this list then, we would meet with the teacher and we would review the data and then also just other factors involved with that student, whether it be attendance, grades, behavioral, discipline reports, things like that. And then from there we can talk about what supports we need to look at to address those needs. So this is some of the data that we pulled, and we look at low, moderate, and high. Shannon talked about tier levels of intervention. That green, that's our tier 1, should be at least 80% is kind of what we're looking at. Level 2, which would be our tier 2 kids, about 5 to 10% of your population is typically needing level 2 level of interventions, and then your high should only be about 1 to 5% of the population. So from this data, we can see that most of our classes are getting, just benefiting from the tier 1 level of interventions. Second grade or first grade and third grade, we need to look as a team to see what type of supports we need to address in those 2 grades, because right now they're a little bit lower in that tier 1. Okay. So this is the type of data that is collected, and then we meet as a monthly team, as a school, and we look at this data to give feedback to all the teachers in the building.
And their individual interventions?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So we meet with teachers individually, and then we come up with an action plan for a particular student that we could offer tier 2 level of interventions. So this is just some data, again, that we pulled from our most recent winter screening.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you, and this is very interesting, but do you always, you also involve parents?
Yes. We, as part of our well check process, teachers have to make a phone call to parents to get children involved in our well check process. After they collect the data from this screener, that next well check day, we end up spending a lot more time doing well check meetings because we look at each individual child that's on here and we talk about what strategies are in place, what behaviors we're seeing, what the teachers are seeing in class, what the guidance counselor is seeing through her interactions within the building. My interactions, I'm part of that team also. And then we create intervention lists. Now we have some kids who, they'll show up with internalizing behaviors, but maybe they're just somebody that's very quiet. Or maybe there's somebody that has an IEP that you're already doing a lot of interventions for. So you rate every child in the school regardless of their interventions that are already in place. So we take a look at those, see if additional things are needed. As part of the grant, one of the other things that we did was create some additional action plan paperwork because our well check action plans were really for academics. But a lot of the kids that the teachers were bringing to our team really had behavioral needs. So as part of that grant, we were able to look at what can we do on our intervention grids to make them more user friendly for teachers and for staff and to help the kids more. So we created that different intervention grids, and this is an example of one of those. Also, as part of that, we do different tier 2 interventions. So we have our school-wide positive behavior tier 1 interventions that Christy talked about with handing out dots and doing booster parties and getting kids involved. And for, like Brian was saying, 80 to 90% of kids, that's going to work for them. Some kids, though, need additional interventions and need something special or something a little bit more. So this is an example of a check-in and check-out. We have trained teachers within our building. One of the interventions that we use quite a bit is kids have a mentor teacher, and it's not their regular classroom teacher. It could be somebody that they had the year before. Maybe somebody that you're thinking about would be a good match for them the following school year. It could be the guidance counselor. Mr. Anderson's at times stepped in with somebody. It could even be your custodian. It could be, one of the cafeteria ladies. Anybody could act as a mentor to a student. What they do is they start their day, they create goals with the child, they talk over behaviors, help get them started on the right track. And then throughout the day, they they fill out their chart, they get points for different things, they have a reward menu that you can pick from to help them. The child has a chance to ask for or talk about what rewards they would be interested in earning. And then at the end of the day, they meet with that mentor again. They review their goals. They talk about how their day went, what positives happened, what things they want to work on the following day or that they need to improve in.
And this is a very it's a nice intervention to track data and progress, because we always start our kids with the expectation of achieving around 80% of the points for the week. And we monitor this on a weekly basis so that when we meet as a well-check team each month, we can kind of see how that data is progressing, hopefully getting to about 90%, and then we start pulling back. So we don't want the students to be reliant on this throughout their time, but something that hopefully can kickstart positive behaviors, and this provides us a way to track that data.
We started doing school-wide positive behavior support in all of the elementary buildings in the 2015-2016 school year. Wylandville was recognized as doing this program with Fidelity that school year. And then every year you have to actually reapply to say that you have met with Fidelity the programming. So actually the next 2 years after that, we also still met with Fidelity at Tier 1 and utilizing all those Tier 1 strategies. Last year, we applied to be recognized for Tier 2 in Fidelity in Tier 2, and we were recognized the first year that we were doing that. We actually applied this year to be recognized for Tier 1 and Tier 2 again, and our meeting with the IU and our representative is actually on March 4th. So we're looking forward to hopefully being able to report to you that we were recognized again. And I have no question.
Can I have a question? I do have a question, and this is awesome that you do this because there are so many children that need this. But once they leave your building in grade 4, does anyone follow up?
You hope that you've gotten the interventions in place so that kids are doing things with more independence because of the building blocks that you've put in place and those foundational skills that you've taught them through all of these strategies and the work that you've done. And like I said, through our well-check process, kids that need those higher level interventions, sometimes they end up as part of our special education population, or there's actually Tier 3 interventions that you can do that are part of special education. So once you get these things in place, we're sharing with those buildings the needs that kids have so that they can meet kids' needs as they're getting.
So you're
up in different
giving
levels.
this information to the next school.
Yeah,
Yes.
the well-check, the kids that are in well-check, which would be those Tier 2 level children that we meet on a monthly basis, as they transition up to North Strabane, the well-check data is shared with that building.
Good.
Because they
Thank
have a
you.
well-check process in place.
And then
That's good.
if you find out the behaviors are because there's something really wrong environmentally, then those things can be addressed.
And that's what's important through the process of having those meetings and having that team get together and talk about these things that teachers are seeing. You can get kids, sometimes it's attendance or truancy issues that you need to address and look at. Sometimes it's, getting outside services or counseling services in place. But you're seeing some of those things, they don't slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Which, you never want somebody who's quiet in class to slip through the cracks. So this
And
gives
it's
you a
the
chance to look 3 times a year.
Good.
With,
And it's a thing where if you catch that in elementary, maybe it doesn't become something right. And that's
Right.
happening in all of the elementary schools.
well, like I said, we were part of a group of a grant. So this is our first year of doing this without the support of the trainings and the
Right.
grant. I actually have spoken with Mrs. Lee, and we want to get this moving in the other buildings. You have to meet with Fidelity at Tier 1 to then move into working to apply for Tier 2. And again, it's something that you have to apply for. So as buildings are getting their programs in school-wide positive behavior support, to those levels, then they're able to get these things in
I mean,
place.
it seems to me that this is like key to being able to identify at-risk kids, right?
That's the idea. Without, and again, that's going to drop the Tier 2 numbers because we're getting to them before they get to the discipline incidents that we're then addressing after the effect. But if we can catch them early on, whether it's that quiet kid in class that we need to include in more,
And
activities
then
in school.
and then it's the kids who enter at-risk categories after elementary, or kids who come to us after elementary. Then
You're
it's figuring
hoping-
out what to do about that.
You're hoping that you make connections for kids. You're hoping that you get them the right supports that they need. Like we do check in, check out. Some other tier 2 strategies would be like behavior plans that you can create for kids. Also guidance groups. We have some guidance groups that they're running with friendships and helping kids connect with others that have like interests, and sometimes just teaching them the strategies to be more successful in creating friendships and getting along in class and having those social skills that you need to collaborate and be part of a group.
How do we get this? How do we make sure this gets into the other schools?
All schools have the well checks, and they're utilizing the school-wide positive behavior plan as a
Right.
strategy as a whole.
Yeah.
But all the schools have response to intervention, which is
And all
the
the
strategies
schools have
they're talking
school-wide
about.
positive behavior
Yeah.
support. Every building is doing that. Each building has a different theme. For example, Muse is doing power. It's something with superheroes and power.
Right.
South Central does Well Done, and they're like make your mark. They do with the whales, and
Right.
they have the expectations listed through that. Hills does something with bees.
Oh, yeah.
Berlin Manor
Okay.
does Paws with the puppy dog theme.
Right.
So each building is doing this. It's just a matter of continuing past tier 1 into the tier 2 strategies. And like I said, Mrs. Lieb is definitely on board with getting this moving in the other buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having us. Any other questions that anybody has for us?
This is a great program.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. They spoke to me.